Hello, and welcome back to the Writer Wizard podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to actually change things up. I'm kind of sick of talking about politics and stuff, so I decided I wanted to do a fun podcast this time. I want to do a video based on what me and my daughter have been reviewing for our D&D Movie Time episodes. So sit back, relax, as we look at characters from Stephen King's universe that have the shine. Alright, so let me start by saying that, if you didn't get from the intro, all month long, we decided to pick a theme for our spooky season, and the theme was we're watching a bunch of Stephen King movies, mini-series. Basically, we wanted to start with it and end with the remake of it. So we're doing a bunch of them. Now, we're not going to be doing all of the Stephen King movies this go around, so we might drop in some more Stephen King stories here and there throughout the year, finish up what we started. There are some that we've already reviewed long before. She watched The Mist before. I think she watched we watched The Green Mile, Shawshank Redemption, The Shining. We watched all those before, so there is going to be a full playlist. But today, what I want to do is, now, I'm not going to be going off information that may or may not exist out there. I'm mainly going to be targeting this entire topic off mostly the movies. Now, remakes will take a part of this, but they will not be as focused on, unless they are more accurate to the book, or unless I know that the book... Let me just say. So, what I'm doing today is I'm going to issue out power levels to all the characters in the Stephen King universe, is what I'm calling it, that have the shine. Now, if you're not familiar with the Stephen King universe, or you haven't watched The Shining or Dr. Sleep, basically, it's an explanation for all these characters that have some sort of powers. Now, this is going to be kind of a long one, and I'm not going to include every single character. For example, let me just go ahead and give you a list of the people or entities that will not be appearing on this list, as some of these villains, either being demons or aliens, do not technically have the shine. They just have powers. So, the list of things not appearing on this list is going to be the quite obvious first one, Pennywise. Pennywise, if you don't know, is definitely not human, so he will not be on the list. He who hides behind the rose is also not going to be on this list. Randall Flagg. I have not read the books of The Stand. I have not actually read or I should say in my case, I haven't listened to the audiobook of the Dark Tower series, mostly because I can't afford it. I really want to. I want to listen to every one of them, but I just can't afford it. So Randall Flagg, because he seems more like a demon in this movie of The Stand, which I have seen. So he's not on this list. Also, there are going to be characters who I know have some version of the shine, but because I haven't seen the movie or read the book, then I can't include them. Like Drew Barrymore's character from Firestarter. I know Firestarter is a Stephen King story. I know she has a power, but I don't know to what range she uses her powers. Also, I will be excluding True Knots. Anyone who's a True Knot does not count. Mainly because of the fact I feel like their power, at least as long as they're young, the younger they are, the more powerful they are, and they're feeding off everyone else's shine. So their levels are a little harder to tell because of the fact they're more like vampires. They gain strength and more power from those they consume. Now, I know we saw the Snakebite girl. I know she had powers prior to becoming a part of the True Knot. But since she joined the True Knot and we didn't get to know her, for very long, 2 hours. Have a 2.5-hour movie. But, I don't think that really counts, so I'm not going to be including her in this list either. But I do have quite the extensive list still, and some of them might be controversial. Now, if a character does not make it onto the list, please, for the love of Almighty, do not flood my comments with, "You didn't put this person. They clearly have the shine." Okay. So, if you watch the movie of Dr. Sleep, there's actually, I believe it's Dick who's talking to young Danny, and he tells him everybody has to shine. Some just shine brighter than others. Well, this list is a list that I put together based on characters who have mainly used their powers, or I believe have a certain reason why they shine more than just a regular person. I'll give you an example of one of the ones I left off the list, just as an example, but Malachi. Malachi was just crazy. He was just psycho, and I don't believe he or many of the other kids actually shined. So, he's not on the list. Also, I didn't use any characters beyond Children of the Corn. The first Children of the Corn, the original. I only used characters from the original one. But, with that said, let's just go ahead and get started. And you'll see where I'm kind of going with this, based on, like I said, power levels. So, the power level system is going to work like this. 1 through 10. The stronger they are, the higher, closer to 10 they are. So, and I will try to give actual reasons why I gave each character the score I gave them. So let's begin with Carrie White. Coming in at a power level of 7. I believe the sudden granting of such power is what made her unable to control it and led her to basically the events that happened throughout Carrie. I believe it was too much power, and it was unlocked all at once because of the trauma she was going through, and just how tough that year or that month was being all on her at once. I think it snapped those powers out, and like Flood, she couldn't control it. She couldn't hold it back on her own, and it just over and consumed her. So, 7's pretty powerful, as you can see. Coming up next, we have Danny Torrance. Now, as a kid, I believe Danny was a 10. He was top tier. Even Dick Halloran said that no one shined like you. You know, Dick was powerful. He could sense the power in others. But Danny, when he walked through the doors of the Overlook, boom, it like all the lights just came on for him. They even imply in the movie Dr. Sleep. So I believe as a kid, Danny was a 10. However, now as Danny became an adult, Danny dropped down to a 9. Now, granted, probably a high 9, like right there on the tip, like just a little bit more of a push. Like if he didn't drink or something, if he didn't become an alcoholic like his father, he probably would have remained a 10. But he just slipped under and into the 9 spot. Moving on to Jack Torrance, I believe Jack comes in at a 5. He was the mid-range, not really enough to really have active powers. And that's what this is going to be. If it's 5 or less, these are characters who typically are very weak in their abilities. But, you know, like I said, I believe Jack was a 5. And maybe his wife was a 5 too. Maybe the fact they were both 5s. And maybe they never used any powers but Jack actually kind of was using powers. Because his powers were kind of like being a writer. His imagination was drawing the ghosts to him. And he was able to kind of like live in an alternate reality where he could almost exist in a different time. Kind of like an astral projection. I believe that is why he was able to see the ghost and kind of shift into their world where there was alcohol, where they were having parties and stuff. And I believe that is made clear by the fact at the very end of the movie, you see him in the picture of a party from a long time ago, because he astral projected sort of to that time period. Coming up next, we have Dick Halloran, since I'm on The Shining right now. And I believe Dick was a 6. I believe that he didn't use his powers all too much. He probably used it mostly as a shield. He was slightly above average, and he could have mental conversations. I believe that was the extent of his powers. I think if his powers were a little bit higher, he would have foreseen the axe. Well, I mean, I know in the book it's a mallet from watching the Nostalgia Critic review, but in the Kubrick version, it would have saved him from the axe. But now moving on, we come to Mother Abigail. And I have not seen the remake. I believe she's the only character from The Stand I'm going to include. Oh, no, there is one other later. But Mother Abigail, I would say, is an 8. I believe she had the power of, same like Dick Halloran, you know, she could telepathically talk to people, but she could do it in her dreams, and pull, it was more like she was pulling them to her, drawing them in. Again, this is a power we're gonna see later on, or I'll talk about later on. But yeah, I believe she had the power to draw those people to her. Now, all of those other people that she was able to draw in, I believe they also might have shined, but their shine just wasn't quite didn't get them on the list. They didn't even make it to a 1. They stayed at a 0, which is like the general populace. So moving on, we got Bill Denbrough from It. Now I believe as the leader of the pack, with his ability to inspire others, to help defeat the darkness that was Pennywise, and his determination, partly fueled by his kick for revenge for the death of his brother. But I believe that Bill, as a kid, was an 8. I think he was very, like, if this was Star Wars, he's pretty strong in the Force. Now, as an adult, I believe Bill actually managed to drop down to a 7. But just like with Danny, I think it was only just under. Like, it would not take much of him really focusing and pushing himself where he couldn't get himself back up to an 8. But I feel like as an adult, losing a little bit of his shine from being away from Derry for so long, being an adult for so long, I believe it dropped him down to a 7. Now moving on to Eddie Kasprak. I think as a kid, Eddie was a 4. He was the main voice of reason, but all of the Losers Club, I believe, were very strong in their shine, where they all actually were on the list. And the reason I think this is because of something I'm going to get when I get to Georgie, actually. But I believe as an adult, Eddie Kasprak actually stayed a 4. Because he wasn't as strong as the others, I believe he was just kind of rode it along through his whole life. And then the same kind of goes for Ben Henscom. But Ben, being a little bit more determined, I believe he also shared some of that same leadership quality. So I believe he comes in at a 6 as a kid and 6 as an adult. Because he was actually very into the history of the town, and he was kind of the reason he was kind of the second leader of the group as a kid. Maybe not as much as an adult, but it really wanted Ben, I believe. And plus, I believe that Ben, and this kind of goes a little bit back to Bill, Ben, I think, if I remember the book right, no, that was Richie. But, yeah, Ben, I just think, had that second leadership quality in him. Now moving on to Richie Tozier. Again, as a kid, I believe Richie was a 5. He didn't really believe in it. I believe he could use his shine to help shield him from Pennywise, to cloak himself from Pennywise. He was the courage of the group. Being the jokester, he was able to anchor them in reality, so they could see through Pennywise's issues. There's a scene in the 90s version where he actually says, hey, there's nothing there. And in the remake, Richie was the last to have really any experience with it. So I don't think it was after him as much. So both as a kid and as an adult, I believe he comes in at a 5. Kind of hitting that mid area. Now moving on to Stanley Uris. And this is where people are probably going to get mad. But I believe as a kid, Stanley was an 8. I think of the two, or out of all the kids, there was 3 kids, I believe, it really wanted to feast on. It really wanted to take its time with and make very afraid. Bill, Beverly, and Stanley. Or Stan. I believe that as a kid, Stan was an 8 because of the fact, like, he was absolutely terrified of it. So I think there might have been, like, more that could have, like, he was already sensitive to that world. He would already seen things that he couldn't explain long before the others were seeing Pennywise or it. And it may not have even been Pennywise or it that he was seeing. It could have been hearing whispers in the middle of the night. It could have been walking past graveyards and thinking he saw ghosts or something. You know, I believe he was very strong. And the reason I think he was so strong is because I think as an adult, he tried his hardest to break from that. Even with Pennywise making them all forget, I believe that some of that lingered with him. And his shine power actually grew the more he got older. And, you know, maybe there was something there. Maybe something, you know, maybe he kept seeing more. But the reason I believe that he grew is as an adult, I think he was a 9. And being that powerful with the shine, and it being so torturous, the sudden floodgates opening, and all his childhood memories coming back, was just way too much to bear, which is why he kills himself. Because now all this mysterious stuff, maybe hearing voices or seeing ghosts, and playing it off like it's nothing, forgetting about it, trying not to pay any attention to it, but internally having that fear that what the heck is going on. And then suddenly these rush of memories and this horrible clown and all this stuff. I believe that's what made him take his life. And it's really the only explanation we have. I mean, not like it was told to us in that way. They never actually, I do think, I mean, they say that the memories of Pennywise coming back to him must have been what caused it, but we never actually got a clear-cut answer on why he took his life. So moving on to Beverly Marsh. Now Beverly, I believe as a kid, I think she was an 8. She was the mother of the group. I think she too was very strong at resisting it because her shine level was so high. But as an adult, and with such an abusive husband, which is, I wish they would go the full route that they went in the freaking book. I mean, seriously, just make the book. You can leave out one part of the book. One chapter of the book is fine to leave out, but leave everything else the rest. And if you know I'm saying that, you know exactly what part of the book I'm okay with them leaving out. But that's it. That one part. Leave that out. Keep everything else. But I believe as an adult, she dropped down to a 7. She was still strong with her shine, and she was able to cope when it all came back to her. But I mean, Pennywise was really torturing her. He was really going after her as a kid. Almost as bad as he was going after Bill. Sorry. In the remakes, in the 90s, in the books. I mean, she kind of gets it the worst. I mean, Bill gets it a lot too, but she's kind of like second. So, I feel like she was an 8 as a kid and then became a 7 as an adult, but it was still high enough where she could easily resist. And I think her power, in addition to shielding herself, which I think all the Losers Club had, basically a high enough shine where they could shield. Like, that's why you need to be a 5 or above to go up against Pennywise. But yeah, I mean, her basic power was we'll call it a truth shot. So, now moving on to Mike. And we're going to finish out the Losers Club with Mike. Mike Hanlon, I believe as a kid, was a 7. He, in the book, I know, got it pretty bad. In the movies, he gets it somewhat bad. Not as bad as the 90s had it, but definitely a lot worse in the remake. Which I love both versions. Both versions, like, there is a good movie between the two, but both of them had really sucky endings. And I just wish they would have gone with the ending of the freaking book. But anyways, so yeah, as a kid, a 7. As an adult, a 7. I believe the only reason why he stays the same is because he never leaves the town. So he never truly forgets about Pennywise and it. And a part of that is always lingering, kind of keeping his shine right on level. Even though he tried to dull it, I think it didn't work. And if he didn't try to dull it, I think he might have been one of the few to actually grow the older he got. Like Stanley. But because he did become an alcoholic and he did, kind of suffer from adult life, I think it didn't actually grow, but it didn't get any weaker for him. Which is why he could see through things everyone else in town couldn't. Now moving on, going to Duddits. Now Duddits is a little bit of a weird one for me. If you've seen Dreamcatcher, it's kind of like he was an alien. But I guess in the book, I don't know for sure, because like I said, I haven't read Dreamcatcher. But I've been told many times by people that he wasn't an alien, and people really don't like that. I wouldn't care if there was like some cross ground, like maybe a good alien actually came to Earth a long time ago and saved this child from dying by giving its life and bringing Duddits back, but Duddits, was a mentally handicapped person, so it did its best. But I'm told that Duddits is a human with the shine, with powers, and I think if that's the case, if he is that powerful of a shiner, I believe that he comes in at a 10. Now, he's got 4 friends here, and I believe Henry is the main of the friends, Henry Devlin. I think as a kid, and I'm only going based off the movie now for this. I'm not going to go off what happened in the book, because I don't know. But as a kid, I believe when Duddits and Jonesy and Pete and Beaver were all together, I believe Duddits awoke in their shine, and they were able to start communicating with each other, feeling what was going on with each other across great distances. That's part of a thing that I'm kind of using to base this level on. For instance, with Mother Abigail, she could communicate into the dreams of other shiners or other people from vast vast distances. So Henry, I believe, as a kid, when his shine was really awoken by Duddits, I would say he was a 4. But because of the constant use of the shine, Henry bumped all the way up to a 6 as an adult. It's only 2 levels, so I mean, constant use, believing in that universe, it's constant for them. Now, Gary Jonesy Jones, I believe as a kid he was really strong with it, and I believe he started off as a 5. But as an adult, we know in the movie he gets into that car accident, and it kind of was unclear to me. I'm like, wait a minute, so like, are they saying, because he was kind of dead. I think he flatlined. But they brought him back, so he was alive. And I think because he came back, I think it bumped his shine up quite a bit. So I think he went, as an adult, all the way up to an 8. So I'm not going to put separate pictures for these 4, by the way. I'm just using the adult pictures here, so I'm just moving that over. So Pete Moore, I believe he started off as a kid as a 4. But like I said, through their constant use of the shine, I believe he actually bumps it up to a 5 by his adult years. Joe Beaver Calendar, I'm not exactly sure how to say that last name. But as a kid, again, I believe he started off as a 4, and with constant use as an adult, managed to get himself all the way up to a 5. Now we're going into the Children of the Corn territory, and I'm going to start with Sarah, the sister of Job, one of the littlest girls. Now, we don't get to see her really use much of her powers, but I believe she was a level 3 shiner. Mostly because of the fact that she could draw pictures of the future, from what I remember of the movie. Haven't watched it in a little while. But if I remember correctly, she was drawing pictures either as events were happening or before the events would happen. Also, I believe both her and Job shared the power to not be influenced by my next person. And my next person is Isaac. So I'll get more into Sarah's power and what I mean there after I explain Isaac when I move on to Job. But Isaac, I believe, comes in at a level 9. I believe of all the kids in that town, for some reason, Isaac was insanely powerful from birth with the shine, and the entity of he who walks behind the rose could influence or talk to Isaac. And Isaac had this power that he couldn't explain, but let him, over time, drive others to do what he wants them to do. Almost like the girl from Dr. Sleep, who became part of the True Knot. She could make people, like, she makes this guy kill himself as she's dying, and it's her, like, literal last command. I believe Isaac could do that, but not on that level. Like, he could, his shining power was that he could make his will, his influence on other children, other people who were still pure, still young, Maybe he could even do it to adults. We don't really see. But with the help of He Who Walks Behind the Rose, Isaac thought it was the voice of God. I'm guessing. I mean, I've only seen the movie. But he's sitting there preaching like He Who Walks Behind the Rose is God. And this thing could have been whispering to him, knowing Isaac has this power, witnessing Isaac having this power. And he's like, yes, this kid can get all the kids in the town to kill all the adults. And then I don't know. I don't get what its whole purpose was exactly, but now moving on to Job. I believe Job was a level 2. We never really saw him do much of anything with power, but I believe that him and his sister being slightly above the curve, but still not the weakest links in the chain. I believe they had the power to not be influenced. Like, they were higher than any other kid in that town except for Isaac. And even though Isaac was powerful, that it did not influence them. Their shine was too much for him to have influence over them, which is why they're off breaking the rules, playing board games and listening to music, which Isaac has outlawed. They didn't join in the murder spree of all the adults. So, yeah. Now these next two are a little bit of a cheat, maybe, but I feel like the son of Stephen King has kind of kept this whole Stephen King universe going. So, up next, we have Finney Blake, who I believe was at a power level of 6, slightly above mid-range, where he could communicate and talk with the dead. Yeah, true, it was a serious situation, but, I mean, he was also seeing the dead, too, I think, at certain points throughout the movie. I've watched the movie like once or twice. I've seen plenty of people react to it. But I believe that, yeah, coming in, he was a number 6. And plus, his mother, and that's the other thing. I'm not including any characters that we're talking about. So, we're not putting their mother on here. We're not putting Dick Halloran's mother on here. Or grandmother, whoever had the shine that he talks about. But, I mean, their mother must have been like a 9 or a 10 herself. Because it drove her crazy. So, up next, we have Gwen Blake, who I believe was at least a level 8. She could go into these dreams and witness the crimes happening. And with a bit of more training and more time and more understanding of her powers, she could probably do so much more with it. I mean, she was thought it was, from Jesus, praying to Jesus that she would have these dreams. But she was having them almost all the time. And she was almost having them, like, on demand. So, I believe with, like I said, training, that it would be more on her. But now, moving on, we move to Louis Creed, the father from Pet Sematary. Now, I'm mostly going to go off the older version. I know there's the remake, but Louis Creed, I think, comes in at a number 2. And I believe that's just his ability to father Ellie Creed. I believe one of them had to have a little bit of the shine, and I believe it was Louis, since Louis can actually communicate with the dead. True, he only does it the one time, and it's kind of mentioned that, oh, Pascal's helping him because of the fact that he tried to help. But, I mean, he could have, but I think it was him having a little bit of the shine that let Pascal appear to him, whereas he doesn't really appear to anyone else. Coming up next, we have Gage Creed, who I believe is a level 1, and had he grown up, he could have even maybe been stronger. Either as strong or possibly stronger than his sister, Ellie. But I think he came up to at least in the level 1. Moving on next to Ellie Creed, I believe she comes in at a level 3. She, like Gwen, was having dreams where she was communicating with the ghost of Pascal, who was warning her. And she said, and then there was another point in the movie. I don't know what happens in the books, but I know in the movie there was even another point before where she said she had a bad dream that Church died. So she talks about having the dream where Church died before Church dies, and then she talks about her daddy doing something bad and Pascal telling her not to let her daddy do that. But yeah, moving on, going all the way back to it, I said I would bring up George, and I believe George Gembro comes in at a level 5. Now, we never actually see Georgie use any of his powers. However, kind of in the book and kind of in the movies, so all 3 versions, the one scene they always seem to leave it pretty much right spot on the same is Georgie's death scene. And I believe that Georgie could sense things. I believe that before he went out in that rainstorm, he sensed it coming for him. And it was, watching, it felt George's presence. Now, Georgie wasn't as strong as his brother, but his brother was sick. And Georgie went out into that rainstorm, and that's where it gets him. But the difference here is that, unlike everything else, every kid else that we've ever witnessed, like the actual ones we witness, it doesn't toy around with Georgie. It doesn't play games with Georgie. And it comes after Georgie himself. I mean, there's other people that it influences other people to help it kill, to help it weaken. But I believe Georgie was too tempting of a target for Pennywise to give up such a lush meal. And I believe that could only mean that either Georgie was way stronger than a 5 and didn't realize it yet, or he was just mid-range, where compared to most of the kids in that town, most kids don't even register. I was going to put Henry Bowers on the list, but the more I thought about it, I don't even think he registers, because the only reason it's able to talk to him in his mind is because it touched him as a child, and it left its sort of mark on him, so it tied the two together. So I'm not going to put Henry Bowers on the list, because I don't think Henry really had any. I mean, if he did, he maybe would come in at a 1. But, yeah, he's not got any real powers. So we got 2 left. Coming up next, we have John Coffey. Like the drink, just not spelled the same. Oh, actually, we got 3 more. Sorry. John Coffey, I believe, was a 9. He could use his shine to heal people, take the negative entities, the negative light, we'll call it. If shine is good light, then the negative light, being sick or something, being injured, he could turn that into like a dark light, as weird as that is to say, and pull it out of you so your body is back to normal. And then he would have to expel it. He would take it into himself, and then he'd have to expel it. Or he could expel it into someone else, like we saw him do in the movie. And I believe that kind of control either would have put him at a 10 or a 9. But because of the kind of character he was and how simple he was, I think that, made him a 9. Next, we have Holly Gibney from The Outsider. And she's just kind of like, she knows things without knowing how she knows them. That's actually kind of how they explain it. She's very weird. She knows things without ever looking it up. She can tell you things that she shouldn't be able to know. And that's why I put her at a 6. I think she has this power, and it's just slightly above mid-range. So, there's one I think I forgot, or must have skipped. Okay, so Tom Cullen, I believe is his name. The guy from The Stand. We'll call him the Moon Guy. I believe Tom Cullen comes in at a 5. He could predict the future, but he didn't have the mental capability to vocalize how he knew this information. And all he could spell was the word moon, which was actually kind of a dead give. Like, that's what was going to be so important later. It's like, oh my god, he's been spelling moon all this time. And I mean, it's kind of like Hodor. He's like the Hodor of the Stephen King universe. So, I think, he had power. I think it came in clutch. But I think he was only mid-range. Much like Jack back from The Shining, so. Okay, sorry about that. I guess I forgot to count. I actually got 2 more. We got, coming up next, Dinah from The Langoliers. And I believe she comes in at a 3. She is able to see, even though she is blind, kinda. I mean, like, she can't actually see, but she can sometimes use her mind to feel out the area around her, to feel the emotions. Which is why when she wakes up in the plane, she immediately starts screaming. She uses the fact that her aunt, who is supposed to be next to her, I think as an excuse. But I think part of it is that she feels the sudden lack of mixed emotions from everybody on the plane. A lot of people on the plane just suddenly disappeared. You're going to notice it. It's like if a room suddenly went quiet because 90% of the people in the room disappeared. You're going to notice. And there's that for her. Now you could just chalk that up to, background noises, but if everyone's supposed to be asleep, she would still be feeling their emotions. So yeah. Also, she could, at one point, she did actually see through the eyes of Mr. Toomey actually a couple times, she saw what he was seeing. So there's that too. And finally, coming in last, we have Abra Stone, I believe is her last name, from Dr. Sleep. And I believe she comes in at a 10. She was way up there. I think she had more power than Danny. She did more with her powers. She wasn't scared of her powers. She was actually able to use her powers to help her fight against the True Knot, and especially against Rose. And I know this little chart thing is all mushed up. I tried to stretch it out for you guys as best I could to fit as many more as I could, but I just can't. So, yeah. She's definitely a 10. She is up there with Child, Danny, and Dunnett. And she may be more powerful than both of them. But, alright. That is going to wrap this part up. Before I move on, though, I just want to make a quick adjustment. Earlier, I said that Ben was into history. It's actually Mike. Now that I think about it, it was actually Mike who was into history, and it was Ben who was into building. Which is why Mike takes up a job at the library and keeps digging through the history of Derry, where Ben goes off to become an architect. That was in the book. I really do. I can't believe I messed that up, because I hated the fact that the remake in the early or late 2000s changed that. It's like, why are you changing the most crucial part of a character? But either way, I still think Ben falls in the 6th line, because I do think he still has that leadership quality, and I think he was very important in being one of the main big factors, one of the leaders of that group. So, but alright, that has been my Shine power level. Do you agree with these? Do you disagree? If you don't like this, I don't know why you watched the whole video. But yeah, I mean, where would you rank people? What power level would you give them for the Shine? Do you buy in that all these characters that have these magical powers actually do have the Shine, like Danny Torrance, in some way, some fashion? So, alright, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Join us on Halloween as we review the remake of It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. And we might even drop in what we think of the new Welcome to Derry episodes, which should be starting soon. So, with that all said, I will talk to you all in the next one. Have a happy Halloween.